Hello everybody, this is Ethan with WiseCrack Studios, and today I actually wanted to go over drum samples. In particular, what they are, why you should use them, and a good way how to use them. So first things first, what are drum samples? Drum samples are files that exist that you can get from people online, you can get them from your own recordings, etc., where it's just a single take of a drum hit. Typically, it's a kick drum, a snare drum, something like that. In particular, right now, I've got this little bus right here of kick drum samples, as well as another of snare drum samples. I've got the actual snare and kick from the song, and the rest just sort of fill it out. Now, why am I doing this? I'm doing this for two reasons. One is just to make the kick and the snare louder and make them stick up front a little bit better. They weren't sticking up front as much as I would have wanted in the song, so I just brought in some samples. The other reason is because I can use them to blend everything together to get a much fuller sound. In particular, with the snare drum here, let me go and unsolo that and unsolo that. Right now, the snare drum for this song sounds something like this. But then if I bring in one of these other snare drums, let me go and do this one right here, it'll sound a little different. And the reason it sounds so different all of a sudden is because it's bringing in this other snare drum hit. It sounds a little bit more like this. And as you can tell, it's just sort of the exact same hit over and over again. In order to do all of this in a good way, you're going to want to blend all of these sounds to taste, as well as you can do what I did, which is go through and add plugins to grab the specific parts of the sound that you like and get rid of the other parts of the sound that you don't like. Perfect example is this little drum right here. The tail on it was so long that I added a compressor to get rid of it. Let's listen to how it sounded originally. You can hear that bam, and how it just keeps going for a second. With this compressor on there, that helps to reduce that a little bit. Not completely, but a little bit. Just enough that when I was going through and mixing this song, especially in the intro here where there wasn't a lot going on just yet, that snare was really sticking out. It was really just hanging around for too long. So I added the compressor, and it's fitting in just a little bit better. Another little trick that I like to do on some of these kick drums in particular is I will find a drum that sounds really, really good in the low end, and I'll just boost that up a bit and get rid of some of this top end over here. And then there was another one right here where I really liked the sound of the top end. In particular, it sounds like you can hear right when the beater is hitting the drum head. Now, as you can see, I didn't do that drastic of a change to get rid of the low end. There wasn't a ton that was there to begin with. Whereas over here, it sounds like it's just adding a whole lot of extra beater head sound, which then overall for the entire thing makes it sound a little bit more like this. And you can sort of hear how all of these sounds blend together fairly well. The question comes in, how do you use drum samples? Now, there are plugins that allow you to do this a little bit more easily, but they function all fairly similarly to fit with one little idea that I went ahead and did in this song right here. Let me go ahead and show you. I went through and I copy and pasted the same drum hits every single time where they went with the actual drum itself in the song. I made sure to be careful that everything stayed in phase with itself. Overall, the entire thing ended up pretty darn good in my opinion, for both the kick drum and the snare drum, where I implemented this trick. And with the combination of all of these, it adds a very full tone to each of the two drums that helps to punch through the mix a little bit more easily. And just to sort of demonstrate, I'll go ahead and play this both ways. Now, while you can hear that there's a little bit of volume that's being added to the whole thing, it's not really the end of what's going on here. It's all of those little different sounds are coming together in a way that helps to boost the entire thing and fill it all out. always go through and try to find like which snare has the best crack sound, which one has the best fatness to it, etc., 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 to where all together it's coming together instead of all just adding volume and only adding volume. And by doing this, if you blend them correctly, you can even make it to where little ghost notes that are happening in the snare drum are being accented a little bit, but they're still ghost notes. They're still there primarily just for texture and not so much just as an extra hit. Now, samples are something that specifically works well for drums, not so much for guitars, on account of how these different instruments work. So I don't really recommend them in most other situations, but hopefully I've just given you something that you can work with in the future. As for me, this has been Ethan with WiseCrack Studios, and I hope that you have a lovely day.